Part 1. First Contact. The signal from beyond. The low hum of machinery filled the compact research station as David Park adjusted his headset, his fingers dancing across a complex array of digital screens. Most nights were quiet in the deep space communications hub, but tonight felt different. A faint rhythmic pulse caught his attention, something that didn't match any standard communication protocol he'd ever encountered. David leaned closer, his heart racing. The signal was weak but persistent, carrying a strange harmonic that seemed to pulse with an almost desperate rhythm. He'd spent years listening to the cosmic silence, but this was something unique. The transmission wasn't just noise, it carried a structured message that seemed to be fighting through layers of interference. As he worked to stabilize the signal, fragments of information began to emerge. Glimpses of a distant world flickered across his monitoring systems, a planet with twin moons and landscapes that looked nothing like anything in human databases. The transmission spoke of a ritual, a ceremony that would change everything. Piece by piece, David decoded the message. It wasn't a typical distress call, but something far more complex. A young woman named Erin Kim was at the center of something extraordinary. She wasn't human, but her emotional signature was unmistakably similar to human distress, fear, desperation, a sense of impending doom. The Coral civilization, as David began to understand, operated under a brutal system of survival. Their world existed on the razor's edge of environmental collapse, and they believed that periodic sacrifices could restore balance to their ecosystem. It wasn't science. It was a twisted form of cultural mythology that demanded innocent lives as payment for planetary survival. Erin was chosen, not because of any personal failing, but simply because her genetic profile matched some ancient prophecy. She would be sacrificed during an upcoming ceremony, a ritual that had continued for generations. The transmission David intercepted was more than just a message. It was a cry for help that had traveled across countless light years. His training as a communications engineer kicked in. This wasn't just another strange signal to be logged and forgotten. This was a moment that demanded human intervention. David understood that behind every transmission was a story. Behind every signal was a life waiting to be understood. He zoomed in on the fragmentary images. Erin looked young, perhaps in her early 20s by human standards. Her eyes carried a mixture of resignation and hope that cut through the digital interference. She wasn't just a victim. She was a living, breathing individual with dreams, fears, and a right to survive. The Coral ceremony wasn't just a simple ritual. It was a complex social mechanism designed to maintain what they believed was a delicate planetary balance. They genuinely thought that by sacrificing selected individuals, they could prevent environmental catastrophe. It was a horrifying logic that somehow made perfect sense within their cultural framework. David knew what he was seeing was more than just an interesting communication anomaly. This was a moral challenge, a test of humanity's capacity for compassion that extended beyond our own planetary boundaries. One intercepted signal could mean the difference between life and death for an entire civilization's understanding of justice. As the night wore on, David continued to decode, analyze, and understand. The signal became more than just technical data. It transformed into a narrative of survival, hope, and the universal desire to live. Somewhere in the vast cosmic darkness, Erin Kim was waiting, her fate hanging in the balance of this unexpected human intervention. The research station's lights flickered, as if the very equipment sensed the importance of what was unfolding. David Park wasn't just a communications engineer anymore. He had become a potential lifeline for a young woman from a world humans had never known existed. And so, with determination burning in his eyes, David began to plan. The signal had found its listener, and now something extraordinary was about to begin. Part 2. Unraveling the cosmic nightmare. David's research room looked like a storm of information had swept through. Holographic screens flickered with alien data, complex diagrams, and fragmented communication logs. He hadn't slept in days, surviving on cold coffee and an obsessive determination to understand the Coral's bizarre civilization. The more he decoded, the more disturbing the picture became. The coral weren't simply following an archaic tradition, they believed their entire planetary ecosystem was connected to these sacrificial rituals. Their advanced technology coexisted with a deeply rooted cultural belief that some lives must be exchanged to maintain universal balance. Erin's profile emerged slowly. She was a young researcher in her society, someone who had actually questioned these traditions internally. Her personal logs, fragments David managed to piece together, revealed a brilliant mind trapped in a system that valued ritual over individual life. She understood the scientific improbability of their beliefs, but was powerless to challenge the deeply entrenched cultural norms. The coral's planetary system was harsh. Extreme weather patterns, limited resources, and constant environmental challenges had shaped a society that viewed survival through a lens of collective sacrifice. Their technology was remarkable. They could predict weather patterns decades in advance, manipulate planetary energy fields, and communicate across vast distances. Yet they remained committed to this brutal tradition of selecting individuals for cosmic restoration. David discovered that every generation, a group of young individuals was carefully selected based on complex genetic and psychological assessments. These chosen ones were considered balance bearers. Their involuntary sacrifice was believed to reset planetary energy systems, prevent environmental collapse, and maintain their civilization's delicate equilibrium. What made Erin's case unique was her exceptional genetic profile. She wasn't just another sacrifice, she represented a rare genetic combination that their elder council believed could potentially trigger a massive planetary energy shift. In their twisted logic, her death wasn't just a ritual, it was a calculated scientific intervention. The communication logs revealed intricate details. Sacrificial candidates were not killed brutally, but through a peaceful transition ceremony that their society considered honorable. Erin would be placed in a specialized chamber where her life energy would be redistributed into planetary systems. To the Coral, this wasn't murder. It was a sacred scientific process. David's hands trembled as he compiled the information. He wasn't just looking at an alien cultural practice. He was witnessing a systematic elimination of individual rights under the guise of collective survival. The parallels with human historical atrocities were uncomfortably clear. Their technology fascinated him. Energy manipulation systems that could potentially terraform entire planetary regions, communication networks that operated on quantum entanglement principles, and predictive models that seemed almost magical, all coexisting with a fundamentally cruel social structure. The research became personal. David wasn't just a distant observer anymore. Every decoded message, every fragmented communication made Erin's potential fate more real. She wasn't just a data point or an alien subject. She was a living being facing an unimaginable destiny. His colleagues would call him crazy, risking everything to save an alien he'd never met from a civilization thousands of light years away. It sounded like something from an unrealistic sci-fi movie. But David knew something fundamental was at stake. The universal right to life, the fundamental dignity of individual existence. As dawn broke in his research station, David made a silent promise. He would understand everything about the Coral. He would find a way to challenge their system, to save Erin, not through violence or aggressive intervention, but through understanding, communication, and exposing the scientific fallacies in their belief system. The cosmic game of survival had just found its most unexpected player, a human communications engineer who refused to let an innocent life be sacrificed for a broken system. Part 3. The Invisible Infiltrator. The workshop buzzed with an electric tension as David transformed his tiny research space into a makeshift engineering lab. Scattered around him were components from advanced communication equipment, experimental adaptive materials, and a dozen half-finished prototypes that represented months of sleepless nights and relentless determination. His infiltration suit wasn't just a piece of technology. It was a lifeline. Each layer was carefully designed to mimic the Coral's architectural energy signatures. David had spent weeks analyzing their communication frequencies, studying the subtle electromagnetic patterns that defined their technological ecosystem. This wasn't just camouflage, it was a complete environmental adaptation system. The suit's outer layer used quantum-adaptive polymers that could shift color, texture, and electromagnetic signature in milliseconds. Tiny nanosensors would continuously scan and adjust, making David essentially invisible to the coral's advanced detection systems. He had essentially created a living, breathing piece of technology that could walk, talk, and blend into an alien civilization. Language became his next challenge. David wasn't just learning words, he was decoding an entire communication philosophy. The coral's language wasn't linear like human speech. It was a complex, three-dimensional communication system that combined verbal tones, body movements, and subtle energy fluctuations. Each conversation was an intricate dance of meaning and context. He developed a specialized translation device that didn't just convert words, but interpreted cultural nuances. It would help him understand the subtle social cues, the unspoken rules that governed coral interactions. Every gesture, every subtle shift in tone could mean the difference between successful infiltration and immediate detection. Communication protocols were next. David mapped out the coral's entire communication network, identifying weak points, understanding their security systems. He wasn't just preparing to enter their world, he was preparing to navigate it with surgical precision. The sacrifice ceremony's location became his primary focus. Multiple holographic models filled his workspace, showing every potential entry point, every possible scenario. He studied architectural plans, energy flow diagrams, and security movement patterns. Each detail was a potential lifeline for saving. Weeks turned into months. David's entire life condensed into this single mission. He practiced movement patterns, studied coral behavioral recordings, and refined his infiltration suit down to the microscopic level. Sleep became a luxury, replaced by pure, focused determination. His colleagues thought he was losing his mind. A deep space communication engineer obsessing over an alien civilization, preparing to potentially sacrifice his own life for a stranger? It sounded impossible. But David understood something deeper. This was about more than just saving one life. This was about challenging a system that considered individual lives expendable. The final suit prototype looked deceptively simple. A sleek, almost liquid-like material that could adapt to any environment. Embedded with communication systems so advanced they could potentially communicate across multiple dimensional frequencies, it was a technological marvel that represented the absolute pinnacle of human engineering capability. As he made final adjustments, David realized he was no longer just a researcher. He had become something more, a potential bridge between two completely different civilizations. His mission wasn't just about saving Erin, it was about proving that compassion could be the most powerful technology in the universe. The infiltration suit hummed to life, its surface shimmering with potential. David took a deep breath. The moment of truth was approaching. Somewhere across the cosmic divide, Erin was waiting, and he was going to bring her home. Part 4. The Moment of Truth. The ceremonial chamber glowed with an eerie, pulsing light. Massive crystalline structures rose around Erin, who stood motionless in the center of an intricate circular platform. Hundreds of coral elders watched in complete silence, their ritualistic robes creating a sea of deep blue and silver that seemed to breathe with anticipation. David's heart raced beneath his adaptive suit. Years of preparation came down to these next few moments. The sacrificial ceremony was more than just a religious event. It was a complex scientific ritual that the coral believed maintained their entire planetary ecosystem. As the primary elder raised a ceremonial energy conductor, David activated his infiltration system. The suit's quantum adaptive technology allowed him to materialize seemingly from nowhere, disrupting the carefully choreographed ritual. The chamber erupted in a collective gasp. Something unprecedented was happening. "Wait," David spoke, his voice translated through the advanced communication system. Each word carried not just sound, but a carefully calculated emotional resonance. that would impact the coral's complex communication patterns. Your understanding of planetary balance is fundamentally incorrect. The Elder Council froze. No one had ever interrupted a sacrifice ceremony in their recorded history. David's sudden appearance challenged everything they believed about their cosmic order. Using the data he'd collected, David began presenting a scientific breakdown of their ritual. He showed complex holographic projections that demonstrated how their sacrificial practices were actually destabilizing their planetary ecosystem, not maintaining it. Each projection was a calculated blow against centuries of deeply held beliefs. Erin, still positioned on the central platform, watched in a mixture of shock and emerging hope. She recognized the technological approach. This was no random interruption, but a meticulously planned intervention. David's arguments weren't just theoretical. He used the coral's own technological systems to demonstrate alternative planetary management strategies. He showed how human scientific approaches could provide sustainable solutions without human sacrifice. Each demonstration was like a key, unlocking a complex philosophical puzzle. The Elder Council's resistance began to crack. Their own advanced monitoring systems confirmed David's presentations. Generations of belief were being systematically dismantled by cold, logical, scientific evidence. Your civilization has potential, David continued, his voice calm and measured. But this ritual is holding you back. Sacrifice is not the answer to planetary survival. Innovation, cooperation, and scientific understanding are. Subtle shifts began happening in the chamber. Some younger coral members started nodding, their traditional respect for elder wisdom now challenged by compelling scientific arguments. Erin slowly moved closer to David, no longer seeing herself as a sacrificial subject, but as a potential participant in a new understanding. The primary elder's energy conductor began to lose its mystical glow. David had done more than interrupt a ceremony. He was rewriting an entire civilization's understanding of their cosmic relationship. As tension filled the chamber, David made his final move. He presented alternative technological solutions that could help the coral manage their planetary challenges. Complex environmental stabilization techniques, advanced resource management strategies, and sustainable development models replaced the brutal concept of human sacrifice. Erin stepped forward, no longer a passive victim, but an active participant. Her own scientific background allowed her to support David's arguments, creating a powerful alliance that the Elder Council couldn't easily dismiss. The ceremonial chamber, once a place of ritualistic death, was transforming into a space of potential rebirth. David had done the impossible. He had challenged an entire civilization's fundamental beliefs without firing a single weapon, without using force, but through the most powerful tool humanity possessed, rational, compassionate understanding, The first signs of acceptance began to emerge. David knew the real journey was just beginning. Saving Erin was more than a rescue. It was the start of a potential cosmic dialogue that could change everything. Part 5. A New Cosmic Understanding. Aftermath of David's intervention rippled through the coral civilization like a profound earthquake of consciousness. What had begun as a simple rescue mission had transformed into something far more significant, a complete societal awakening. In the days following the interrupted ceremony, Erin became the unexpected catalyst of change. Her conversations with David revealed the depth of human philosophical thinking, an approach that valued individual life and collective progress simultaneously. The coral leadership, initially defensive, began to listen. David's evidence was overwhelming. Using the coral's own advanced monitoring systems, he demonstrated how their sacrificial practices had actually been degrading their planetary ecosystem rather than protecting it. Complex data projections showed alternative paths of survival, paths that didn't require human suffering. The younger generation of coral researchers became David's most powerful allies. They saw in him a different model of problem-solving, one that combined technological innovation with genuine compassion. Discussions that once would have been impossible now happened openly, challenging generations of deeply ingrained beliefs. Erin's role became crucial. She translated not just language, but entire philosophical concepts. Her understanding of both choral and human perspectives made her the perfect bridge between two dramatically different civilizations. She could explain the nuanced emotional and scientific complexities that pure data couldn't capture. The escape wasn't just a physical journey, but a collective intellectual migration. David had to carefully navigate diplomatic complications, ensuring that their departure wouldn't trigger defensive responses from the choral leadership. Every communication, every movement was calculated with precision. Their spacecraft, a collaborative design using both human and choral technological insights, represented more than transportation. It was a symbol of potential cooperation, a living demonstration that different species could work together, learn from each other, and create something extraordinary. As they prepared to leave, David realized the mission had transformed from a personal rescue to a potential first contact scenario. The data they were taking back would revolutionize human understanding of extraterrestrial civilizations. More importantly, they were carrying hope, a proof that compassion could be a universal language. Erin's personal transformation was equally profound. From a selected sacrifice, she had become a potential leader, a bridge between civilizations. Her scientific background, combined with her newfound understanding of human approaches, made her a unique individual with the power to create meaningful change. The choral leadership's final communication was complex. Part acknowledgement, part curiosity, part cautious respect. They recognized that their centuries-old belief system had been fundamentally challenged, not through force, but through rational dialogue and scientific evidence. David's communication equipment continued recording every interaction, every subtle shift in understanding. This wasn't just a rescue mission anymore. It was the beginning of a potentially revolutionary cosmic dialogue. As their spacecraft prepared to jump into faster-than-light travel, both David and Erin understood they were carrying more than just physical evidence. They were carrying the potential for a new kind of interspecies relationship, one built on mutual respect, scientific curiosity, and genuine compassion. The universe, vast and mysterious, had just witnessed something extraordinary. A human had entered an alien civilization, challenged its most fundamental beliefs, and walked away not as a conqueror, but as a partner in understanding. Their journey was just beginning. Somewhere between the stars, a new chapter of cosmic exploration was being written. One conversation, one moment of compassion at a time. The spacecraft's engines hummed with potential, carrying with it the hopes of two civilizations, the dreams of peaceful exploration, and the remarkable story of how one human's determination could change everything.